Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're looking at frankly alarming stack of sources that we've been piecing together.
It's a huge collection.
Yeah. Articles, internal reports, policy memos, market data, all from late 2025 and into early 2026. And at first glance, none of it seems connected. You've got stuff on nicotine pouches, the food pyramid, the price of copper.
Totally separate domains.
Exactly. So our mission today is to decode what's going on here, to find the single grand strategy that we think ties all of this together.
And when you zoom out, the pattern isn't just there, it's unmistakable. It really is.
Yeah.
What our sources suggest we're seeing is a systematic preparation of the entire nation for a worst-case scenario.
A kind of strategic autarky. That's the term from the sources.
Strategic autarky. The idea that the U.S. is deliberately, systematically hardening itself to survive a total blockade-level conflict.
Okay, let's unpack that right away. Because that phrase, strategic autarky, that sounds extreme. It implies we're getting ready for a war where global trade just stops. What does a siege economy even look like at a national level?
The siege economy is basically the systematic hardening of a country's entire infrastructure. We're talking food, fuel, industrial capacity, everything. And it's all being geared against one specific threat, a total naval blockade.
So the idea is that countries under siege, historically, they lose because they run out of bullets or bread.
Exactly. They run out of food, fuel, or munitions. This entire strategy is designed to prevent that from ever happening here. These policies, they're meant to ensure that the entire country, civilian and military, can feed itself, fuel itself, and arm itself, even if every single container ship stops coming tomorrow.
So it's not economic theory, it's civil defense logistics.
That's the perfect way to put it. Civil defense, but executed through national economic and social policy.
And here's what's so fascinating and what our sources really highlight. The whole strategy seems to rely on the media not connecting these dots. You see news organizations reporting on, say, the food pyramid, or the talk about Greenland, or semiconductor reshoring as completely siloed stories.
Precisely. They're covering Greenland as a geopolitical story.
Right.
The food pyramid as a culture war battle over nutrition.
And the copper hoarding is just some weird bubble in the commodities market.
Yeah, they see all the individual bricks, but they are completely missing the fact that they're all being used to build the same wall around the North American continent. And the sources suggest that this fragmentation, this chaos, is actually being used by the administration to push these huge changes through really, really fast.
So they avoid a big public debate or maybe more importantly, widespread panic about what's coming.
Exactly. You apply what we're calling the war lens, and suddenly all that compartmentalization just collapses, and you see the grand strategy for what it is.
That distinction policy as a disguise for strategy is a perfect lead-in to our first example, and it's maybe the most surprising one. It's about nicotine, specifically nicotine for the armed forces.
It seems so small, so trivial.
It does, but it's a brilliant tactical test case for this whole idea of domestic supply chain autonomy. So let's start there. What happens if the U.S. goes kinetic with China and Beijing just instantly bans all vape imports?
That is the exact logistical nightmare that our sources show has been wargamed at very high levels. The U.S. military, especially your junior enlisted, is incredibly reliant on vaping products.
And the supply chain is a vulnerability.
It's a massive vulnerability, 90%, and that's probably a low estimate. Of all the hardware, the atomizers, the batteries, the coils, it all comes out of one place.
Shenzhen, China.
Shenzhen. In a hot war, that supply line doesn't just get disrupted, it vanishes. It becomes a ghost overnight.
Okay, so beyond a bunch of soldiers being annoyed, what's the actual measurable impact of this great vape famine, as the sources call it?
The human cost immediately translates into military inefficiency. The models predict a measurable and pretty significant dip in combat effectiveness.
Yeah.
Within the first 72 hours, you'd have mass, abrupt nicotine withdrawal hitting entire formations at the same time. We're talking platoons, companies, suddenly dealing with extreme irritability, loss of focus, anxiety, a measurable drop in the fine motor skills you need for, complex tasks.
So while the military isn't going to collapse.
No, of course not. But the morale drop would be huge, and the operational cost, the distraction, the internal friction, that would be very, very real. The main activity in the barracks would instantly switch from, whatever they were doing to just complaining bitterly. It undermines the mission.
That paints a really grim picture of how they'd have to adapt on the fly. If that supply is gone, what pops up in its place? What becomes the new currency?
Well, the adaptation is predictable, and it's economically fascinating. You'd see the immediate rise of Zyn cartels,
Zinker.
nicotine pouches, Zyn, Rogue, Velo, all of them. They would instantly become the new reserve currency in whatever theater of operations you're in. The sources were speculating that a single tin of, say, 6 milligram of coffee-flavored Zyn could trade for a 4-hour duty shift,
Ah.
or a good pair of boots, or other critical supplies. You'd have specialists organizing these complex, high-risk smuggling networks just to move pouches around.
And I imagine a regression to old habits, too.
Oh, absolutely. The mass return to traditional cigarettes. The sources call it the smoke pit revival.
The smoke pit revival.
It would make a huge comeback as the center of social life, of rumor intelligence, of stress relief, simply because domestic tobacco is a lot easier to get your hands on than tech from Asia.
Which brings us to what the planners are calling the Zyn checkmate. This is where you can see the deliberate, strategic pivot. They've identified Zyn as the, quote, combat-ready nicotine of the future. Why Zyn?
It's 100% about the supply chain. It's that simple. Vaping is totally tethered to Shenzhen. The Zyn supply chain, on the other hand, is overwhelmingly domestic.
Where is it made?
The primary manufacturing fortress is in Owensboro, Kentucky, running 204/7. And to make sure they have future capacity, Philip Morris International, the parent company, is sinking $600 million into a massive new plant in Aurora, Colorado.
So they have redundancy built in.
They have redundancy. So in a total blockade scenario, while the vape users are going through forced withdrawal, the Zyn users are completely stable. The supply line is secure, it's resilient, and it's deep inside the U.S. interior.
But the rise of Zyn wasn't just some organic consumer trend. The sources we have detail a very engineered quality to its success. Some call it astroturfing.
Absolutely confirmed. The data shows its market saturation was meticulously engineered. They had to get around traditional ad bans, so they did it through this influencer economy.
On platforms like TikTok?
TikTok, Instagram. PMI is careful. They deny direct payments. But their Zyn Rewards program created this huge gamified system that incentivizes users, especially young men, to constantly post about their pouches. It effectively created a massive, decentralized, and totally compliant marketing engine that just slips through all the platform loopholes.
And the military is key to this. The market penetration there is staggering.
It's the linchpin of the whole strategy. I mean, tobacco companies have always seen the military as a captive audience, but the modern numbers are something else. The studies in our sources show that U.S. soldiers use nicotine pouches at about 10 times the civilian rate.
10 times.
24% of soldiers versus just under 3% of civilians. This isn't an accident. It represents a guaranteed, continuous, domestically supplied morale asset. The military is future-proofing its addiction.
And this brings us to the government's role. It's not a direct subsidy. It's something subtler. Regulatory protectionism.
That's the strategic subsidy right there. And it's executed by the FDA. The FDA has been waging this deliberate, slow, bureaucratic war on imported vaping products, which are almost all from China.
Crushing them with red tape.
Red tape, import bans, impossible marketing requirements. And at the same time, they're handing out marketing-granted orders to domestic nicotine pouches like Zyn.
Letting them market as a reduced-risk alternative.
Exactly. So by using the regulatory hammer to smash the foreign competition, the government is effectively handing PMI a state-sanctioned monopoly on this critical military morale asset.
It's using health policy to achieve a defense objective.
That's the perfect synthesis.
Okay, so we've secured the soldiers' morale. Now let's scale up. How does this doctrine apply to the entire population? This brings us to Section 2. The caloric fortress.
This is maybe the most shocking example of policy as a military strategy. The new Trump 2026 food pyramid, which is officially the dietary guidelines for Americans, 2025 to 2030, it's not really nutritional advice.
What is it then?
It's an America First trade and logistics policy disguised as nutritional advice.
And the sources describe it as a complete inversion of everything we've been told for decades.
A total flip. For years, the base of that pyramid was all about grains.
Right?
Commodities often sourced globally or processed using these very complex globalized methods. The new 2026 pyramid, its foundation, its wide base, is now red meat, poultry, and full-fat dairy.
And that's where logistics dictates diet.
Absolutely. The U.S. is a colossal net exporter of beef and pork and dairy, so by recommending protein at every meal, the administration guarantees this massive built-in domestic market for American ranchers and dairy farmers.
It's a subsidy for Iowa, Texas, Nebraska, the heartland.
The agricultural heartland, exactly.
And this wasn't just a suggestion. It was immediately followed by legislation. The whole milk mandate.
Yes, the Whole Milk for Healthy Kids Act, signed January 14th, 2026. It directly reverses years of low-fat milk mandates in schools. And the sources confirm this is more than just a win for the dairy lobby. It's an operational subsidy.
How so?
Well, low-fat milk requires extra processing, separation. It adds cost and complexity to the supply chain. By encouraging consumption of the raw, domestic, full-fat product, you simplify everything. And you encourage kids to consume a dense caloric resource that is produced 100% on U.S. soil.
So the strategy is clearly about maximizing reliance on things that are easy to produce here and are calorically dense, which also explains the simultaneous war on ultra-processed foods. That's in the guidelines.
Precisely. You have to ask, why demonize processed food if the only goal is nutrition?
Because they depend on global supply chains.
Exactly. Those are the supply chains that fail first under a blockade. Think about the ingredients that would vanish. Palm oil from Southeast Asia, soy isolates, specialized gums, chemical stabilizers,
They all require container ships.
and complex industrial processing. By declaring war on them, the administration is effectively sanctioning the globalist grocery store and pushing consumers toward a whole foods diet sourced domestically.
So the strategic conclusion here is pretty stark. If we're under siege, steak and potatoes means you're relying on the North American interior, which is blockade-proof.
While a diet of processed snacks means you're relying on container ships from Asia, which are not. That is the caloric fortress. If war cuts off shipping, the ingredients for processed food just disappear. By shifting the entire country's diet to things we grow here, you make the food supply resilient. The food pyramid becomes a wartime logistics map. It points to the safest source of calories.
Incredible. Just incredible depth on that. So we've secured the pantry and morale. Now, Section 3, hardening the fortress. This is about securing the perimeter and the actual resources needed to fight. Let's start with energy. Venezuela. You called it the blockade-proof gas station.
This is the kinetic part of strategic autarky. It was executed with really alarming speed in early January 2026. The sources confirmed the U.S. operation wasn't just about regime change. It was a hostile takeover.
Resulting in Maduro's capture.
His capture between January 3rd and 9th, and the immediate seizure of all Venezuelan oil revenue held in U.S. Treasury accounts. The announcement was that the U.S. would control their oil sales indefinitely.
And this is obviously a move toward hemispheric energy integration, getting away from those volatile supply lines in the Middle East.
That's the key logistical realization. A tanker crossing the Atlantic or the Indian Ocean is a huge, slow target. It's a sitting duck for missiles or submarines. By seizing control of Venezuelan heavy crude, the U.S. secures a short, blockade-proof shipping route. It's almost all in the Gulf of America, straight to Texas refineries.
So it secures our fuel supply inside our own security perimeter.
Exactly. It's the difference between a supply line that crosses an ocean versus one that just crosses a sea that the U.S. already completely dominates.
But it's also a move against our main competitor. It's a checkmate.
It absolutely is. That's the geopolitical genius of it. For years, Venezuela was sending the vast majority of its oil to China to pay down debt.
And that oil was vital for China's industrial base.
Absolutely vital. That specific type of heavy crude. By seizing the fields and diverting that entire flow to U.S. refineries, which, critically, are built to handle that exact type of crude, the U.S. just cut one of China's main pre-war fuel lines, its resource denial at the highest level.
And to secure the fields, our sources mention the use of private military companies, PMCs.
Yeah, that's classic total war efficiency.
Right.
The U.S. military can't afford to tie up active-duty combat units who are trained for high-intensity war on static guard duty at oil wells.
So they outsource it.
They outsource the security detail for the gas station. It frees up those critical combat troops for the actual front line, which is probably going to be in the Pacific. It's a conservation of force.
Okay, so if Venezuela is the gas station, let's look north. Greenland is the roof of the fortress. The sources are clear. The renewed push to acquire it is all about military anticipation. It's not a real estate deal.
Not at all. It's about strategic denial and resource acquisition. China has been calling itself a near-Arctic state and pushing its polar Silk Road. If China gets a docking station or even just major influence in Greenland, they get a critical operating base in the North Atlantic. Their subs and spy ships could bypass our normal choke points.
So goal number one is just to deny the enemy that forward base.
It's goal one.
And then there's missile defense. Greenland is the linchpin for the Golden Dome system.
The geography demands it. Any missile coming from Russia or China toward the U.S. has to come over the North Pole. So Pacific Space Base, which used to be called Thule in Greenland, that's our early warning system. It's the eyes and ears.
So owning the island means we can turn the whole thing into an interceptor field.
Exactly. You can bristle it with anti-satellite and anti-missile weapons, and you secure that northern shield without having to negotiate leases with Denmark every few years.
And beyond security, there's the resource angle. Greenland as a backup battery for U.S. tech.
This connects directly back to the siege economy. We can bring chip manufacturing back home, the silicon shield, but without the raw materials, the rare earths, those foundries are just expensive buildings.
Right. Neodymium, dysprosium.
All the things China has a near monopoly on processing right now, about 90% control. Greenland has an estimated 25% of the world's remaining deposits. So securing that means you neutralize China's ability to choke our war machine of the materials it needs for everything. Guidance systems, jet engines, night vision.
And finally, it lets us control that famous choke point, the GI-UK gap.
The Greenland, Iceland, UK gap, that's the strategic key to the whole North Atlantic. Any Russian or Chinese Navy has to pass through there to threaten the U.S. East Coast or our supply convoys. If the U.S. owns Greenland, you can flood that gap with sensors and sonar and sub-hunters. You essentially bottle them up in the Arctic.
So we have the roof, the pantry, the fuel. Now let's talk about the factory floor. The systematic resource hoarding, the mineral stockpile, and the silicon shield. The pace of reshoring semiconductors has been crazy.
That January 14th, 2026 deal was historic. It basically forced the rapid reshoring of the most advanced chip manufacturing to new plants in Arizona and Ohio. And this is pure survival. The analysts all agree. If Taiwan falls in a war, the U.S. military runs out of the specialized chips for its smart weapons in a matter of weeks.
So it's a desperate race against time.
A race to get enough domestic foundries online before the shooting starts.
And the government's approach to other critical minerals, like rare earths, has totally changed. It's no longer a free market approach.
That's one of the clearest signals of the siege mentality. The Pentagon has started taking direct equity stakes ownership shares in American mining companies.
That's unprecedented for an administration that's usually against nationalization.
The logic is just brutally simple. You only do that if you expect the open market to fail catastrophically. You have to break China's processing monopoly now to secure your supply chain. The government is directly guaranteeing the survival of its resource base.
But the most visible, just screaming market signal of all this has been copper.
Copper is the smoking gun of the siege economy. It really is. It was designated a critical mineral back in November 2025. That sounds boring, but it unlocked a flood of Defense Production Act funding.
And then in January 2026, the price just exploded.
It broke $13,000 per ton, an all-time high. And it was explicitly driven by defense modernization and the AI infrastructure build-out. The demand signal from the government is what economists call price inelastic. The Pentagon needs infinite copper for AI data centers, for missile systems, for microgrids, and they will pay literally any price for it.
Because the alternative is losing.
The alternative is losing the war.
And the hoarding is visible in the global supply data, right?
Oh, absolutely. Our sources confirm this aggressive draining of the physical supply. The U.S. warehouse system, COMEX, is overflowing. Record stockpiles. Meanwhile, the warehouses in London and Shanghai are running critically dry.
So we're vacuuming it all up.
The U.S. is vacuuming up the world's available physical inventory. You create a domestic glut for yourself, for your defense needs, while China, which also needs a ton of copper, faces a hyper-expensive shortage.
Secure the asset, deny the enemy.
Same pattern. Venezuela oil, food pyramid, now copper.
You used a term earlier, backwardation. Could you break that down for someone who's not watching the commodity markets?
Sure. In a normal market, the price for copper in the future, say 3 months from now, is a little higher than the price today. That covers storage costs, insurance. It's called contango. Backwardation is the opposite. It means the price to get the physical metal right now is much higher than the future price.
So it signals panic.
It signals physical panic. It's like paying a massive premium just to get a gallon of milk today, because you know for a fact the shelves will be empty tomorrow. The war machine can't wait for the next shipment. It's a critical signal that big buyers think the supply lines are about to get cut instantly.
The physical preparations are clear. Energy, food, materials. But total war needs more than that. it needs the right kind of people. Let's move to Section 4, the Human and Financial Control Grid, what we're calling the Digital Supermax. We'll start with the digital draft.
Yeah, the military realized it had this huge personnel crisis. The Defense Innovation Unit's Replicator 2 initiative, to field thousands of new drones, it suddenly needed thousands of specialized operators. Immediately.
And the traditional recruitment pipeline was too slow.
Way too slow, too rigid. They hit a bottleneck. They had the drones, but no pilots.
So the solution was a rapid accession pathway for gamers.
Military speak for targeting people with high dexterity remote interface skills. The reports are explicit. They see traditional infantry training as unnecessary friction for someone flying a drone swarm from a bunker in Nevada. So they created a whole new job, MOS-15X, the Future Tactical Unmanned Aircraft Systems Operator.
And the training reflects that. It's about cognitive ability now, not just physical fitness.
It's the coding over conditioning doctrine. They shortened the training for 15X by cutting out a lot of the heavy physical stuff, forced marches, obstacle courses. They're prioritizing cognitive load capacity, pattern recognition, and high APM actions per minute over your ability to run a few miles.
And they're giving waivers for physical fitness standards.
Dramatically expanded waivers for cyber and drone jobs. They don't need you to do a pull-up. They need you to have a 99% kill rate on a flight simulator and the stamina to stare at 5 screens for 8 hours straight.
So recruitment has fundamentally changed. They're going where the talent is.
Exactly. They saw what Russia did successfully during the Ukraine war, using gaming platforms to recruit. So we copied it and formalized it. The Army drone team is now a primary recruitment tool. They use esports competitions to directly pull high APM civilians into the 15X MOS. They're literally recruiting from the leaderboard.
Creating a two-tiered military.
A meat-space draft for your traditional roles with high physical standards, and the digital draft for remote jobs with cognitive standards and physical waivers.
And all of this is happening while the financial markets are screaming that a huge conflict is coming. Gold and silver.
The numbers are just wild. Gold pushing $4,600, silver at $85, up 200%. That's not normal inflation. That's capital flight and a total loss of trust in the system. Central banks all over the world are buying gold and repatriating their reserves.
Because they saw what happened to Russia's reserves.
They learned the lesson. If you go to war with the U.S., your dollar holdings can be wiped out with a keystroke. So they're getting ready for a world where the dollar is weaponized or just ignored. Which is why you keep hearing these rumors about the BRICS nations launching their own trade currency backed by hard assets, an off-ramp from the dollar.
And silver specifically is the war metal?
Silver is the definitive smoking gun. You absolutely need it for high-end defense manufacturing. It's in every missile guidance system, every advanced semiconductor, every fighter jet.
And just like copper, it's in backwardation.
Manufacturers are panicking. They need the physical metal today because they think the supply is going to vanish tomorrow. The price action confirms that big players believe a massive industrial war is right around the corner.
Let's turn to the digital control system being built alongside this, the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve and the Genius Act.
The Strategic Bitcoin Reserve, set up in March 2025, was about the U.S. government seizing and stockpiling over 200,000 Bitcoin, with a goal of getting to 1 million. It's what you'd call financial denial of area. The motive is to make sure that if the whole fiat system crashes and reboots on a digital ledger, America holds the keys to the new reserve currency. It's a hedge against total systemic failure.
But the real weapon for domestic control isn't Bitcoin, it's the Genius Act.
That's right. That act from July 2025 was a brilliant piece of political judo. It banned CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, which made the privacy advocates happy. But at the same time, it legalized and heavily regulated private stablecoins like USDC. And here's the key. It forced them to be 100% backed by U.S. Treasuries.
So it turned private stablecoins into programmable money under federal control.
Exactly. It enables programmable settlement.
Which is a backdoor to digital rationing without ever using the toxic phrase CBDC.
Precisely. In a siege economy, you don't need paper ration books. The digital dollar in your Apple Wallet, a stablecoin, can be coded. The currency itself becomes the control grid. The code could say, transaction declined, import limit exceeded if you try to buy something foreign made. Or it could cap your weekly spending on gas or meat. The money itself enforces the rationing.
And this whole system needs a universal digital identity, which brings us to the Real ID and its new deadline of May 2027.
The delay to May 2027 is a strategic misnomer. It's not a delay. It's a data collection phase. Every citizen who hasn't complied yet gets logged in a DHS database. When the war starts, the hard lock kicks in. If you're not in the system, you can't fly, you can't get federal benefits, maybe you can't even transact.
And that date, May 2027, aligns alarmingly well with the predicted window for a conflict with China.
It's a perfect date to flip the switch for maximum control, just as things are escalating.
And they pulled this off by co-opting private infrastructure, specifically Apple's.
A masterful move. By letting U.S. passport holders create a digital ID in our Apple Wallet, the government just bypassed all the slow-state DMVs. And the executive orders that followed are creating a framework to move all federal interactions, taxes, benefits, travel onto that single Apple Wallet ID. It's the schematic for a national digital prison, built right into the phone you already carry.
So the point of a digital supermax isn't just to contain people, it's to extract value from them.
That's the core difference between a prison and a supermax. A simple cage just keeps you in. The digital supermax eliminates neutrality. It eliminates gray markets. If you want to eat, you have to use their rationable digital economy. If you want to travel, you have to be in their database. You become a digitally traceable cog in the war machine.
And they've backed it all up with legal force, the forfeiture trap. This is where hoarding assets becomes a huge liability.
Right, look at the changes to civil asset forfeiture laws that kicked in on January 1st, 2026. The burden of proof has shifted. In simple terms, if an algorithm flags your account for buying critical war materials, a big pile of copper, too much fuel, a crypto stash, it could be flagged as unexplained wealth tied to national security, and the government can seize the assets first. The burden is then entirely on you to prove you weren't hoarding or getting ready to violate the Defense Production Act.
So if I panic buy gold with cash, I'm walking right into that trap.
You're tripping multiple wires. If you buy $15,000 in silver with cash, the shop has to file a form with the IRS. If you try to get around that by buying $9,000 this week and $8,000 next week, that's called structuring. It's a federal felony.
And the AI at the banks will catch it.
Instantly. Fueled by FedNow's real-time processing, it'll detect the pattern and file a suspicious activity report. Your account could be frozen before you even know you did anything wrong. The system is designed to catch people trying to leave.
And for the crypto people who think they're free,
that's the new IRS Form 1099-DA. Every U.S.-based exchange now has to report every single transaction. And if you move a lot of crypto off an exchange to a private wallet trying to escape, the exchange has to flag that withdrawal under new anti-money laundering rules.
So you're not buying freedom, you're putting yourself on a list.
A list of individuals attempting to exit the regulated banking system. And that will be the first list they check when they impose capital controls in a national emergency. You have to choose. Stay visible and be taxed and rationed, or try to hide and get seized.
Let's talk about the final piece of this human puzzle, the undocumented population. How are they integrated into this siege economy?
They're being integrated as a formalized wartime labor caste. They can't be deported en masse because that would crash the agricultural economy that we need for the caloric fortress. So instead, the strategy is to formalize their servitude.
Starting with the remittance wall.
The new 1% remittance tax. It's designed to destroy their ability to send cash home. If they can't send money out and they can't easily spend paper cash here, the value of their labor just collapses. They're trapped.
And that sets up the agricultural draft.
The pivot to what the sources are calling state-owned guest workers. Undocumented individuals get a guest ID instead of deportation, but that ID is tied to a specific job assignment.
On a farm or in a meatpacking plant.
The exact infrastructure needed for the food pyramid supply chain. It's effectively indentured labor. You can't quit, you can't move, you can't demand higher wages because your legal status depends on it.
And the consequence is hyperinflation for anyone who's unbanked.
Correct. As the official economy goes digital, cash becomes suspect. A grocery store might start charging double for a loaf of bread if you pay with paper cash, because handling it is a risk for them. So the undocumented suffer double inflation. Their wages are devalued and prices go up. It cements them as the base of the pyramid. The class that picks the crops and cleans the barracks, paid in a discounted currency with a digital collar to keep them there.
This is a stunningly detailed picture of a fully secured supermax. Why is this all happening so fast? Why this convergence in early 2026?
The timing is critical. It's a race against two clocks. First, the war clock. Intelligence likely says that China's best window to move on Taiwan is narrowing to 2026 or 2027. So the U.S. has to be siege-ready, food, fuel, copper secured before the first shot is fired.
And a second clock.
The political clock. The administration needs this state of national emergency to be fully established before the 2026 midterms to make these radical changes harder to reverse.
And the cynical take is that it's also a way to drown out domestic scandals.
The timeline confirms it. The release of the Epstein files on January 6th was buried. Why? Because the headlines were the Maduro capture on the 3rd, the new food pyramid on the 7th, the Venezuela oil seizure on the 9th.
Drown out scandal with the noise of war preparation.
And then there's the third term play. If you have a total war or a national emergency in full effect by 2028, the argument for continuity of government, maybe even repealing the 22nd Amendment, becomes politically plausible. They're trying to beat the invasion clock and the term limit clock at the same time.
So we've laid out the construction of this digital prison. Now for the final exam, the most provocative part of the sources. What happens when the statistically likely trigger hits? A Carrington-class solar flare, a CME, probably in 2029 after the peak of solar cycle 25. The digital supermax fries.
And that's the terrifying irony. The system designed for perfect control instantly becomes a mass trap. The CME hits, the internet backbone fries, the grid fries, data centers fry, all that cloud-stored data, your real ID, your bank records, it's just gone. Inaccessible.
The digital lock-in.
The trap snaps shut. The digital ID in your Apple Wallet is just useless code. Millions are stranded because their digital key to travel melted, and there are no physical licenses anymore. And just-in-time logistics collapses instantly. Grocery store shelves are empty in 3 days.
But this is where the food pyramid strategy pays off for the state in a horrible way.
The survival map is confirmed. People in cities who rely on those complex, global, electricity-dependent supply chains, they starve. But the U.S. interior, the caloric fortress that shifted to domestic beef and dairy, is sound. Cows don't need the internet to eat grass. If you live near the cows, you eat. If you live near the ports, you starve. The food pyramid wasn't just logistics, it was population control.
And this chaos triggers the next phase, the Copper King seizure.
Yes. The government won't try to fix the old fried grid. They'll build insulated microgrids for critical zones, military bases, bunkers, key factories. And this is when the Defense Production Act kicks in for real. The military will use those digital records they downloaded before the crash to seize private assets. They'll come for your copper wire, your generators, your solar panels, all in the name of national security. Everything you hoarded becomes theirs.
Leading to the ultimate reversal of fortunes. The laptop class collapses.
And survival class rises. All the white-collar skills, the email jobs, the financial analysts, they become obsolete overnight. And the workers who are digitally trapped, the undocumented, the manual laborers, the tradesmen, they become the most valuable asset in the country.
Because they know how to work with their hands.
They know how to farm without GPS, fix a diesel engine, move goods without a forklift. The poverty class becomes the survival class. And the wealthy laptop class becomes refugees trapped in cities with no food.
It's a profound and frankly terrifying picture. Securing the roof, the pantry, the fuel, the factory, the wallet. The full realization of strategic autarky.
The motive is clear. It's a race against the war clock and the political clock. But the real lesson here is that the digital supermax removes neutrality. You can't just opt out with cash or crypto. The system is designed to extract value from you by force, by compliance, or by control.
So the question isn't whether we're trapped.
It's whether the system is set up to successfully extract our value for the war effort.
So what does this all mean for you, for the listener? If the digital supermax is now closed and every big purchase, Bitcoin, gold bullion, cash, is being monitored by algorithms designed to catch you, how do you prepare without triggering that trap?
The only viable path is analog, and you have to do it with invisibility and utility in mind. You acquire physical assets slowly and, for lack of a better word, stupidly.
Utility over commodity.
Exactly. Don't buy shiny gold bars, buy junk silver, pre-1964 dimes and quarters. It looks like a coin collection, not a financial hoard. It's harder to track and seize.
What else?
Focus on things that skyrocket in value when the grid fails. Specific medical supplies, manual tools, pre-1980s diesel trucks that don't have complex electronics, and most importantly, local bartering skills. The strategy is to build a life that's resilient, valuable, and invisible to the FedNow and Apple control grid. That's your homework, listener. Find your analog safe haven.